Hi, my name's Neil. Thanks for coming to check out this video. I presume you're here because you want to know about wrist guards. Well, today I'm going to tell you about my experience with them and hopefully help you out with making decisions about them, and maybe you'll pick something up that you find useful. So if you do, let me know in the comments below. If it's your first time here, thanks for joining me, and I hope you want to stay and subscribe. Anyway, let's get on with the subject in hand and talk about wrist guards. So with skateboarding, much like any other sports, there's all kinds of accessories you can buy, and the obvious ones are protection accessories because, you know, it's the kind of activity where you're gonna end up hurting yourself in one way or another at some point. So I've already done a video about helmets, or the ones that I've had so far, and my opinions on those, and I'll stick a link up there or down there and you can check that out. But yeah, today we're going to talk about wrist guards, and they're another safety accessory that you might want to consider, or maybe you're looking into them because you're here watching this. So let's start out with what they are and why you might want them. So when you first learn to skateboard, you're going to fall over. It's inevitable. And the kind of inbuilt human reaction to falling over, especially when it's off of something like a skateboard, is to put your hands out as you fall to steady yourself or catch yourself. And that can lead to a lot of injuries in the wrists, simply because of the impact of when your hands hit the floor, that kind of bending motion that happens in your wrist. If you fall from anything like a decent height, you know, fully standing, and if you're going at any particular speed, or even if you're standing still, falling straight onto your hands like that is going to put a lot of stress and shock on your wrists. And so in the skateboarding industry, you can buy wrist guards that kind of splint your wrist. And the general construction, or the most common design, is kind of like a glove that you might sort of put your thumb into, and then it has like a body that wraps around. And the kind of construction generally is that there'll be like a plastic bar on the top and another one on the bottom, and then some straps that go round. So they end up being about that kind of length, from like a glove up to about that kind of length, and the straps go around. Essentially what it's doing is sandwiching your wrist and creating like a splint. So there's like a support bar down the bottom and a support bar along the top, and it's kind of creating a splint and sandwiching your bones, so that if you fall and you put your hands down, the kind of impact doesn't bend your wrist back. It kind of prevents your hand from going much further than about there, and it also prevents your wrist from bending that way and potentially breaking your wrist. What is usually most helpful is the kind of palm pad part of it, because the plastic quite often starts around here. The plastic brace on the bottom starts around here, and it's kind of curved like that to allow you to kind of impact on this plastic bar and save your hands from bruising or scratching or whatever. So that's the most useful part, is that it's kind of impact protection and like a palm pad. I've got some wrist guards here, some various ones to show you, and I'll start off with these ones that kind of help to explain the design a little better. And these are some actually bought when I went on a snowboarding holiday, but they kind of worked for me for skating when I first started skating. When I was snowboarding, I had the same kind of situation where I was slipping off and putting my hands down, and my wrists began to ache. I could feel the joint really hurting, and so I bought these wrist guards to kind of help with that. So they're not of any particular known brand in the skateboarding world. These are actually a brand called Diaz. I've never heard of them before. Maybe they're a bit more well known in snowboarding world, I don't know. But they're probably about 20 years old as well, so you know. Anyway, so these are that kind of construction where it's like a glove, and it has this bit for your thumb to fit through, and on the bottom it has some kind of hard wearing material. And if I just slip it on like that, you can see it's a glove, and it has this hard plastic bar that goes all the way down, and then it has this strap that will go around, wrap around, and that allows you to pull it tight and then Velcro up on the top. Now these ones don't actually have a bar on the top, and skateboarding ones most often have that kind of bar on the top as well. That's kind of the general construction, and I'm sure you can tell straight away that if you fall on a hard plastic bar like that, it's going to protect you, a bit like the caps on knee pads. That hard plastic is going to protect you from the impact and save your hand really. And that continuation on means that this area here does not flex, and so ideally your wrist is not going to flex at that joint, and it's going to kind of help to save your wrist from a break. The reason that they have this splint on the top as well with skateboard ones is just for kind of double splinting effect really. So it's just trying to pinch your hand and wrist together and just stop it from flexing a lot, which is an issue in itself, and we'll come to that in a minute. So that's kind of the most straightforward kind of design of a wrist guard. Something else that you might consider beyond that kind of wrist guard, there are some available that are what I would say are more palm pads, and you see these a lot with roller derby kind of shops that sell stuff for roller derby and roller skating, and that's these kind of ones. So they're very short and they've got a big plastic area on the bottom, but they've got a plastic rib in the top and this plastic plate on the bottom. And I consider these to be more palm pads because when they're on, do up the straps like this, and really it's just a big plastic plate there, semi-flexible, not as rigid as the other one I just shown you, but they have a very wide area that kind of protects when you put your hands down. So these are more, I would say, more palm pads and more geared towards you putting your hands down, and there's not an awful lot of splinting effect going on in the wrist there. So those are kind of palm pad style ones, and I wouldn't really recommend them for skateboarders. Maybe they're okay if you just want something that's going to be a bit like a glove and just stop your hands from getting scratched, but they're not really strong enough to be what would normally be considered a skateboard wrist guard. So they're two that I kind of tried out first. All right, and next I decided to kind of dig a little bit deeper with my research and try and find something that might be not so obvious but would suit my requirements as much as possible. And really what I wanted was the palm pad kind of idea with some flexibility, you know, not holding my wrist dead solid, you know, kind of a hybrid. I sort of had an idea of what I wanted, and I came across these ones which are made by Smith, which is quite a well-known brand for skateboard pads anyway, and you know, they've been going for years. So back when I was a kid I had Smith knee pads for a while, and recaps as well, little plastic caps that go on the knee pads to rejuvenate them. So I knew the Smith brand. So coming across these wrist guards, they are called Smith stabilizers, and what they really are, they have the palm pad part that goes you know, kind of protects that part when you put your hand down. They have a top brace, but you can see the ribs across here means that the whole thing flexes. So they have that flexibility, and they have that kind of solid palm pad for you to skid on when you put your hand down. So that kind of seemed like a good idea to me. And the rest of the construction, really, it's an entire neoprene sleeve with a thumb hole and then a securing strap that goes around. So I'll put it on. I'll actually get the one for my right hand. You literally have to slide your hand in like a glove and then pop your thumb out the side. I have to say, when these were brand new, it was so hard to slide my wrist into there. Maybe because I've got a bigger hand than the kind of thickness of my wrist would normally dictate. I have no idea. But it was so hard to actually get that on. It was, you know, a kind of wrestling match just for that itself. which, you know, it means they're tight and they're good. And these were, I think, size large, according to the sizing charts, what would suit me. But still, they were very tight. And as you can see now, after wearing them for a bit, they're a lot easier to get on. So I would say if you end up buying some, don't be put off by the fact that they're super tight, unless of course it's cutting off your circulation. But once you've worn them a few times, they do loosen up. So once you've slipped it on, you can see that you've got that hard plastic palm pad there, and it goes right down to sort of the midpoint on your wrist. You have this single strap that you pull tight and then literally wrap round itself, and then it Velcro secures kind of on the back of itself like that. And so you know, that's not doing an awful lot, it just tightens up. You can see that there's a don't know if you can see very well, I can show you on this one. There's kind of a split down the thing, and as you pull that tight, it kind of tightens around your wrist. So really it's just holding it kind of secure. It's not, doesn't go super tight. And actually over time as well, these elastic straps began to stretch out so much that I was ending up wrapping it around so much that there was a bit sticking out the end when I tried to do it up, or that the Velcro wouldn't even stick on the back anymore because they were too long. And I ended up doubling up. I sewed it together, kind of folded it back on itself and sewed it up together to shorten the strap, to get it to the point where it once again did up properly like that. So anyway, when they're on, they're good. And these worked out pretty well. I was quite happy with them. They served the purpose pretty well. And the only real downside that I had was that, as you can see here, the leather, once the stitching starts to tear away, if you know, you have a lot of impacts, the stitching starts to fray and the leather peels up, and then the whole thing will start coming apart. So they could be a lot better stitched, maybe double or triple stitched around this area. That would help. And also that the plastic plate that you're kind of having as a protection, sometimes if I fell particularly hard, it felt like that was actually hurting my hand. You know, that was when I put my hand down, that was hitting into the ground, and then that would then hit into my hand, and it would sort of get some palm bruises. And that's what I was trying to avoid with the much wider palm pad type things. They stopped you getting palm bruises. And you know, all of this kind of falling down on your hands like this was really in my very early days of skating, and these days I don't quite do the same kind of falls. You know, you sort of learn to fall differently. So really this is from the point of view of an absolute beginner, where you do just put your hands out and fall. Once you've been skating a little while, you don't quite fall in the same way, and you don't naturally just go hands down straight away. Or at least I learned that, you know, it wasn't even a conscious thing. I just began to do it less as I sort of got comfortable with falling. So, you know, that bruises on the hands, you know, that was only happening on concrete, and maybe it wouldn't happen to me these days, but I think this was the first proper pair of like branded, well-known skate brand wrist guards that I got. And I think I was quite happy with them, and I may well go back to using them again someday, because there's nothing really wrong with them. I think they became harder to buy. I don't know whether they're still a current model. The only other side to it is that they're short, in the sense that, you know, they only go just past your wrist, so they're not really going to stop a mid-arm break, because they only really protect kind of your wrist joint, and that kind of vulnerable scaphoid area. That's the most common kind of break that you'll get, is the scaphoid bones. There's lots of tiny bones in your wrist around this point, and they're the most common for damage and the ones that end up needing surgery. It's not going to stop an actual, you know, long bone break. I forget what these bones are called, but it's not going to stop that. It's really palm and the tiny wrist bones that it'll help with. So yeah, that's the Smith Stabilizer Pro. Pretty good. I recommend them over the traditional clamping type wrist guards, because they've got a bit of flex on them, and that's good. That's for movement and to stop breaks. So yeah, on to the next one. And then through a lot more research, I happened upon these ones, which are called Flexmeter D30, and these are much bigger, much longer, and they provide a lot more wrist support and protection because they're that much longer. So a regular skate wrist guard is generally about that sort of length, and these are quite a bit longer. But again, the same sort of thing where you have straps here and you put your hand inside. You can loosen them off like that, and then they wrap around like that and do up tight, and they end up with your thumb out there. And you can see that there's a lot more plastic on the top here, which is not quite so necessary, but you know, it's there. There's plastic in the bottom all the way along, and there's also this kind of crash pad here, so there's a lot more palm protection. And in the palm there is actually a squishy material that is called D30, and that's why these are called Flexmeter D30. D30 material is like an impact squishy material that is used in protection clothing. So these are the Flexmeter D30, and I've actually ended up using these the most, and I really like them, and I'm not sure that I'm going to change away from them to something else for quite some time. These are the ones I've kind of settled on at the moment, and the reason why is because they were designed in cooperation with a surgeon who saw a lot of wrist injuries, and I don't know if the company contacted the surgeon or the surgeon just contacted the company and they got involved, but they ended up working together and designing these with the intention of minimizing wrist breakages, and that's why they are longer, and it's also why they are more flexible. So you know, if I do these up as tight as they would be when I'm skating, so that's nice and tight, and the top plastic and the bottom plastic are splinting my arm, but they're still a bit flexible. This plastic is quite flexible, and the reason for that is that when your wrists are splinted very tightly, there is actually a potential to break your bones because of that splinting effect. Quite often it'll be at the end of the splint. So if your wrist is held very tight and splinted, it's fine up all the way up where it's being protected, and then when there's suddenly nothing, you can end up with a break higher up. Now that does bring me to an argument that some people have about not wearing wrist guards at all, where there is the perception that if you're wearing wrist guards, this part of the wrist is protected, but then when the protection stops, there's nothing further up, so it can lead to breakages at the end of the wrist guard. You know, if you put your arm down and all of this lot is splinted, and then you get to the end and there is nothing, people say that wearing wrist guards causes breakages. And you know, I can see a certain amount towards that argument. People use that as a reason to not wear wrist guards at all. But you know, to be devil's advocate, I would also say that if there's an impact that is strong enough to break your arm higher up here, where it's a much thicker bone, much stronger part of your arm, then it's going to do an awful lot worse down here where your wrist is thinner, and you have all these little bones at the end of your hand where it meets your wrist, and they are a lot more fragile. So yeah, if there's an impact that's strong enough to break your arm up there when you're wearing a wrist guard, if you're not wearing a wrist guard, there's going to be an awful lot more damage down here where it's a lot more sensitive. So I kind of debunk that in my reasoning, that it is still good to wear wrist guards rather than not at all. Now some people don't wear wrist guards because they don't put their hands out. They've learned to not do that, and that's the best way that you can protect against breaking your arm or your wrist, is to not put your hands out. Pull your arms in and maybe roll on your shoulder or other ways to kind of protect yourself without putting your hands out and breaking them. And in my personal view, in defense of wearing these wrist guards, is that I have had an awful lot of slams where I've put my hands out and these have saved my arm. I know they have. I've broken my wrist before, and after I broke my wrist I started wearing these, and I've skated a lot harder now since breaking my wrist with these on, and I've never even hurt my wrist, let alone tempted any other damage like a break or anything. So I know these work for me because I skate a lot harder now than I did when I broke my wrist. And you can check out the video about that way back in my other videos. I'll put a link wherever it is, up there, down there, and you can see that if you like. So in a nutshell, I'm always going to wear wrist guards now because I know they protect me great, and these ones are really the ones for me. So much so that, you know, these are getting really battered now, and I actually rebuild them. So where you might be able to see the kind of stitching comes away here and gets worn out, and some of the straps start to break, I actually take them apart. I pick all the stitching out and replace the fabric with ripstop fabric and sew them back together again and rebuild them, because they're really expensive. They're actually about £70 in the UK. I don't know what that is in other regions, but you can look up the conversion rate on Google and see. But they're pretty expensive for wrist guards. Are usually maybe about £25. So, but to me, the price is definitely worth it because I have good wrists, and I've never hurt my wrists since starting to wear these. But saying that, you know, I have got a brand new set. So these are the ones that I've been wearing for almost 3 years now. I have got a brand new set in reserve, which I will show you now. So they're called Flexmeter double-sided wrist guards, and you know, the original design for these was for snowboarding as well. So much like my other ones, the snowboarding industry seems to have a lot more focus on good designs than perhaps the skateboarding industry, but the company adapted these that were designed for snowboarding and created these that are designed for skateboarding. And the only real difference, I think, is the top plastic. I don't think the top plastic there is on the snowboarding ones, and the bottom skid plate there I don't think is on the snowboard ones. But either way, I mean, that plastic there actually does come off. It's just Velcro on there, so you can take that off, and the idea is that you can take that off to put snowboarding gloves on. So it may be that they're available in this construction for snowboarding and skating. But I'll show you the label and I'll tell you what it says. So it says triple wrap security straps. So that's the front, and then 2 on the wrist. Patented Flexmeter physician developed wrist protective technology. Easily fits under gloves. Doctor recommended wrist protection. Integrated with D30 light impact material. So that's the material that's actually on the palm. It's kind of an impact material, a little bit like the footprint insoles that you get to put in shoes that kind of protect from impact. It's a little bit like that stuff. It says a design for all usage, available in a single and double-sided model. So that top piece there is not there on the single-sided ones. I think it might even be the bottom, I can't remember now, but one of these plastic pieces is not there. It has the removable palm skid plate and D30 palm protection system. To me, you know, they're pretty good wrist guards, and that's the ones that I've settled on for now. Now, of course, the internet will be an absolute wash with opinions about wrist guards, and you know, ranging from people that say that they do more damage than good, or people that say that one is better than the other. And I realize that I'm just adding to that noise, but I just wanted to tell you what really works for me. And if you look back through my channel and some of my videos, hopefully you'll see that I skate really fast in concrete bowls, and you know, I'm skating vert as well, and I do have accidents quite often, which can be pretty scary, but I always get up and walk away. I don't think I've actually had any kind of injury that's put me out of skating by wearing pads. So I wear full pads, helmet, knee pads, wrist guards and elbow pads, and I don't fall and hurt myself, but I do skate really fast, and to me the faster I go the safer it is, because it's the impact's actually less. You know, when you're going very fast, it's a bit like a stone skipping across the water. If you fall off, you know, you kind of skid. You don't tend to just go splat and land splat dead. You tend to land like that when you are going slower and you've only got one way to go, and that's down. If you're going faster, you kind of go across and down, so you end up with a bit more of a soft landing. At least that's how it tends to work for me, so I'll keep going that way. So I just thought I would give you that little show and tell of some of the wrist guards that I've tried and what I've settled on, and hopefully it will help you out. No doubt you'll let me know in the comments below the wrist guards that you've tried, whether you like them or not, which ones, which brands. And inevitably there'll be people that say they don't use wrist guards because ABC, and you know, that's all fine, and all I'm doing here is letting you know my angle on it and why I do wear wrist guards, and trying to rationalize the argument about wearing wrist guards does more damage than good. I don't believe that, and I like to think that I'm walking proof of that. So anyway, I hope you found that video useful. Let me know what you think below. Please do subscribe if you found it useful and you think you might come back again. I'm going to be doing more of these videos. As I said, I've done one for helmets already, and I will be doing more videos about safety protection gear that I use in the future, so keep an eye out for those too. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care.